Hi, my name is Tristan Hall and I'm the director of Nothing Productions. I designed such games as Gloom of Killforth and 1066 Tears to Many Mothers and the upcoming Veil Wraith. And I'm here today to talk about world building in games. Specifically, I'll talk about the context of it within the realm of Killforth, which is the fantasy world in which the games Gloom of Killforth and Veil Wraith take place. So, in terms of setting up about building this imaginary land of Killforth, my main sources of inspiration were the Dungeons and Dragons games that I played growing up, role-playing games that I was raised on, and also Tolkien's Middle-earth, which obviously had a sort of profound impact on me as a kid, both in the books and the Ralph Bakshi cartoon, and then later as an adult the Peter Jackson movies. But all things fantasy are what fed into my development of the world of Killforth. And so initially it came from creative writings, stories that I wrote about it, and then later it was adventures that took place within that land, which I ran as part of a D&D campaign for my friends as a teenager. And so a huge part of Killforth for me was that I wanted to have a lived-in history, and so a lot of it rests on this idea that civilizations have gone before and risen and fallen, and the point in time in which the games and the modules and the adventures and stories take place are at a moment when the world is in its most highest level of peril, basically. So this toxic miasma called the Gloom has been sent forth from beyond the Veil, and the Veil is something that's a mystical sort of dimension, as it were, that surrounds Killforth and lives within it and around it. And when that Veil is sundered, demons come out from beyond the Veil and cause this toxic gloom to spread and start destroying the land. So in the original setting, in my mind, and in my earlier stories, the gloom has taken over the world and destroyed life and sucked all the colour and life out of the world, and the heroes would living within this kind of horrific environment would be living in outposts, small sort of cities or caves or towers that were tiny sort of spots of civilization within this destroyed realm. But it was kind of a bleak sort of world, and so rather than jump into that straight away, my first game, Gloom of Killforth, sets up the opportunity for the heroes to exist within Killforth and stop those events from happening. So Gloom of Killforth is actually a game about a sort of classic fantasy struggle between heroes and wizards and warriors against the demons that have come out of the Veil to destroy the world and to make it into their own image. And Gloom of Killforth gives you the opportunity to stop that from happening. And so it's a game that tells an epic fantasy tale where you travel around the world trying to gather artifacts and allies to help you in the fight against these demons, these ancients as they're called, to stop this gloom from spreading. And in terms of trying to build that world, for me, like, key elements were to have stories written down about the history and about the place and the civilizations that went before, and the different factions that are struggling for power within the world, such as the Doom Guard, which is like an undead legion led by sinister forces, and also the Knights of the Rose, or the Rosen Templars, who are ostensibly on the surface, they're like these heroic knights in armour who are fighting back the gloom, but they also have their own sort of sinister agenda as well. And then you have the Wild Claw barbarian tribes out on the plains who are doing their own thing. And then the centre of commerce within the land of Killforth is the Sprawl City, which is where all of the people the sort of free people have gathered together over thousands of years to try and coexist peacefully in what is an otherwise quite perilous and dangerous world filled with monsters and goblins and orcs and dragons and all that kind of stuff. And so in terms of trying to feed that world into a fantasy adventure game, not only were the stories essential to me, but I also wanted the artwork to be on a parallel with anything else out there. So it was hugely important for me to be able to have Gloom of Killforth stand on a shelf next to like titles like the Lord of the Rings games and Star Wars games, and have the artwork go sort of toe to toe with those games and hold its own. And to that end, I commissioned over 300 unique images for Gloom of Killforth, so that every card in the game is a unique counter, a unique stranger, a unique being, a unique place or landscape that you're exploring, or quest that you're embarking upon. And no other game since or before has had that sort of level of artwork in just like the base game alone. And so it felt to me like I'd achieved at least that objective, because I can't draw for toffee. So I was able to work with some of the most brilliant artists in the world to make these sort of ideas of people and places and creatures come to life. And so I come up with an idea, of a goblin assassin or something like that. I'd give the artists a brief of how to, summon that to life within the world of Killforth. And to that extent, they, in my opinion, succeeded magnificently, because Gloom of Killforth is one of the prettiest games I've seen out there, and it wins awards for the artwork and stuff. And I'm allowed to say that objectively, because I didn't draw any myself. And so we've tried to maintain that level of quality with the sequel, Shadows of Killforth. There's a couple of images here. Shadows of Killforth is the same game system set in the same world, but takes place in the Far East equivalent of Killforth. If you think Gloom of Killforth takes place in a sort of Western-inspired medieval environment, then Shadows of Killforth is more a sort of feudal Japan and Far Eastern area of Killforth, in which bakemono and oni and ninja and samurai exist. And so it sort of changes the dynamic quite a lot between Shadows of Killforth and Gloom of Killforth. And again, that comes from trying to breathe life into a fantasy world that draws heavily on myths and legends from history, from our own history. And so the artwork is absolutely key to me to be able to bring that huge epic fantasy feel to the games itself, the games themselves. And so with Gloom of Killforth, with over 300 unique images in the game, each one had to matter. And so for me, each card had to mean something. There's lots of sort of deck building type games and stuff where you'll go through 10 cards around, or you'll combo and play 50 cards around, and you just, at the end of the day, you're throwing down these cards and it's just numbers, and you make your combo and then you shove them all in your discard pile and it's on to the next round. And there's great fun to be had in deck building games, but for me, for Gloom of Killforth specifically, I wanted each card to matter and each card to have its own story to stick around. So every card has flavor text on it that tells you a little bit of information about who that person was, or what that monster was, or why you're going on this quest. And mechanically, the cards in the game, the encounters that you meet, will stick around. They're harder to overcome. They require time and resources for you to explore, or win that person over to your cause and make that stranger become your ally, or explore that ancient shrine and overcome its traps and rescue that lost child, and these things require your resources and your time for your hero to overcome those. And when you do overcome each of those, each card will give you a reward, and the reward itself is like another story that stems from that encounter. So rather than you just defeating a goblin and getting a load of gold and weapons or whatever, you will get, the card will become a rumour. So you'll replace it with a rumour card, which you draw into your hand. Or you can take the card itself as a rumour. And these rumours that you collect will feed the saga, the ongoing story of your hero. And so you'll take these rumours, and games often can either provide you with a wall of story which you'll read out, and it's a very scripted tale that you're sharing with your friends, or that you're playing solo by yourself, and you'll get walls of flavor text. Or the reverse of that is a game like chess, which has almost no story whatsoever other than what you put into it as a player, and maybe the story of having defeated your opponent in a clever and interesting way. And so you have the sort of two extremes of storytelling within games. One of them is this abstract, like super pared down games like Euro games or chess or the strategic games, and on the other hand you have these heavily thematic games with reams of flavor text and stuff. And so for me, I think the best combination of those two to deliver the most coherent and interesting world building or immersive story, for me meets within those two extremes in the middle, because you have to have the flavour and the existing world built so that the players can feel like they're exploring, a detailed and richly researched or tapestried fantasy world, but also give the power back to the players themselves to tell those stories. So give mechanics that bleed into the gameplay and deliver immersion, and let the players tell the stories themselves. So whilst each card in Gloom of Killforth has flavour text on it that tells the tale and tells that particular story to the players, it also has keywords, and every card in the game has keywords, and the players themselves are using a keyword system, a mechanic in the game where they're collecting keywords to string together their own stories. And each chapter that their hero completes of their saga that they're telling, they have to link together keywords, and they'll either take the keywords from each card and just read them out and match those keywords with what's required for their tale, or they'll string together their own narrative, weave their own tale by using those keywords and saying, for example, when they complete a chapter, okay, I'm now the hero who explored the lost shrine and overcame the goblin assassin to free the people of this forgotten hamlet. And it's entirely up to the players then whether or not they want to pursue a tale like an intriguing and in-depth story tale, or if they're in the mood to just sort of fly through a bunch of encounters and just have a fantasy dice rolling experience. And so with giving players the pieces of the story, it allows them to either to indulge in it as much as they like, to tell the saga in as much detail as they wish, or to just sort of skim over it and have a general idea of what was happening. And you can tell that from the way that people report their plays of the game in places like Board Game Geek or Facebook or Twitter, when they're posting their session reports about their characters exploring. And some people will just dip in and out of the narrative that explains what their heroes were doing in the world, and then some people will drill down deep and leave thousands of words of short stories, almost novellas, describing their heroes' experiences within the land of Killforth. And for me, that's huge, because it means that they're bringing their own imaginations to the game rather than being told what happens. They're creating their own stories. And so, for me anyway, that a lot of games and a lot of gamers enjoy being told the story and having almost like Fighting Fantasy choose your own adventures, where it literally, the story is here and you find out what happens as you turn from one page to the next. But for Killforth, for Gloomy Killforth, for me, I wanted an element of that, and there's a lot of choosing which path to take and which monsters to take on. But it also hands the narrative back to the players as well, and lets them do with it what they will and run with it as much as they like. And so creating that immersion through the flavour text on the cards, the keyword system, and of course the artwork was huge. But also I wanted to offer another texture, another level to the world building. And a part of that is that my wife Francesca, and my business partner, is a terrific composer. Her mum was a concert pianist, and so Francesca would be playing music on the piano and composing scores all the time whilst I was designing games. And music is huge for me. It's as influential on me as any media, as any books or movies or games. And so I wanted an extra dimension to the game, which would be a soundtrack that you can listen to as you play along. And so Francesca composed an entire album of piano music, and we wanted it to be like Philip Glass's Dracula piano score. And so Francesca's developed and delivered an entire Gloom of Killforth soundtrack, which you can listen to as you play the game, and you can just stick this on in the background. And all of the songs on that album are inspired by the themes of the game. There's tracks like The Gloom, which is literally the sound of the gloom travelling throughout the world. And it's all about delivering the best possible experience. Short of going around somebody's houses and making noises whilst they play, or delivering God knows whatever smells, that would represent the world of Killforth. Music just is key, and being able to share the music that I was listening to whilst designing the game with people who are playing the game at the same time is just sort of this terrific opportunity to blend and hit people with all kinds of media. You've got the artwork, you've got the flavour text, you've got the game mechanics to immerse you, and then you've got this music on top. It's just, for me, I think it's a terrific way of adding immersion to those world building elements, and naming the places in the game, and a part of the process. Gloom of Killforth was our first game, and we kickstarted it back in 2015. And a part of that was taking names from backers, so they wanted to put their characters' names into the game, and so we found a way to make some of the places or people or adventures tie in with it could be their Dungeons and Dragons characters or the character they created for Skyrim, and bringing their people into the game by inserting the names into the flavour text. And so it was almost like a shared world building experience in that respect as well, which is, again, I think it allows people to have more of a connection with the game, but it also leaves us with these really interesting character names that are threaded throughout the world of Killforth as you're playing, and it's, again, entirely up to the players how much attention they want to pay to those individual character names and stuff. But there are so many interesting environments to explore and people to meet in Killforth that it just adds, again, this extra layer of characters and personality, and probably a significant portion of those weren't just created by me. Probably half of them in Gloom of Killforth were named by players and backers of the game, which is excellent. Again, another way to sort of share a world building experience. And in terms of making that feel, trying to make this world feel bigger, 300 cards is what we ended up putting into the base game or thereabouts. And the way that the map is laid out in Killforth is 25 locations are placed on the table, and as you move around these locations, these 25 cards, you draw more cards to populate them to find out what's living in that world. So you might walk into the Dark Mire, which is a Badlands location, and in the Badlands they're more mystical, so you're more likely to encounter adventures that will lead you to spells and magics. And so you might draw a quest where a child's gone missing or a local lass has been poisoned, and you have to find the cure for that poison. And so that will populate that environment. And as you're exploring Land of Killforth, you're bringing all these adventures into the world, and it's different every time because of the way that the cards are shuffled. So as you're looking at the map, you're looking at all this artwork, and you're seeing it all placed in front of you, travelling through this land and having these sort of epic adventures. And for me, that really delivers what I wanted to experience from role-playing games, as a kid growing up, and capturing these moments from stories like The Lord of the Rings, where characters are going on these epic quests and having fights with monsters, but also exploring ancient places and shrines and seeing elements of the civilizations that have gone before, and traveling within these worlds. And hopefully through a combination of the artwork and the narratives and the flavor text and the music and the game mechanics, it delivers a world, a cohesive world for players to explore. And I think if there's any reason, if there's a main reason why Gloom of Killforth is going to go into its now 4th printing and still gets high ratings on Board Game Geek and good reviews and stuff, it's because I hope a huge element of that is the world building that has been painstakingly built to create the world in which you explore when you play the game. And so that's, that element of games is hugely important to me, and I think it's recognisable. If you play a game like The Lord of the Rings, the card game, and you see how much effort the developers and designers of that game have put into delivering you into Tolkien's world through the artwork and the flavour text and the mechanics of the game, and it pays in dividends when the mechanics and the world building dovetail, and you get the most beautiful sort of thematic game experiences you can have. So yeah, I'd say world building is hugely important, and thank you for listening to me waffle on about that if you got this far. Thanks for your time, and I'll be back soon with another video.